If you're new to Parallax, the best way to describe it would be an animation, transition, or some kind of an event that is triggered by scrolling on a page. And as you can see in the example of what we'll be creating in this tutorial, as we scroll down, it will hit a trigger point, which is dynamically calculated. Once you hit that point, you're going to have an animation. In this instance, the div is drawing in. The best way to describe Parallax is an event that happens as you scroll down a page. It could be different elements moving at different rates or even directions as you scroll. Things could be fading in or animating in some way. And it's really something that you'll see more and more on the web these days if you start looking at inspirational websites, especially portfolio sites or sites that are advertising something creative. Whether it be a service, product, or otherwise. It's really something that can take your website to another level, and in a lot of cases it's actually not that difficult to do. It requires a basic knowledge of especially jQuery, but in many cases you'll be trying to do as much as possible, as really with anything with CSS. So again, this is what we're going to be doing in this tutorial. So let's make a start. Now I'm going to be using brackets as my text editor. You can use obviously anything you want. This is going to be pure code. We're going to do as much as we can with CSS, but there will be an element we're going to need to do some scripting for, but we'll take it slow. And that's about it. So let's make a start. Now, as you can see, I've got a blank canvas here. Over here I've got Chrome, which is by far the best web browser for the web or to learn web development. It's the best browser for debugging. Probably show you a bit of that later when we get into it. And of course you can use any editor, which I may have said already, but you can use anything you want. Dreamweaver, Sublime Text, Notepad, it's up to you. In this instance I'm going to be using brackets. So let's go ahead and make a start. So before we can really do anything, as you can see, I've got my basic body layout here. So I've got my doc type, my head tags and body tags. And of course, the most important thing here really is the fact that I've included jQuery on the page. Obviously, as I said earlier, we're going to be doing some scripting. We're going to be using jQuery, so we will need to call jQuery on the page. And obviously I'm using jQuery. I'm not hosting jQuery in this instance. I'm calling it from Google, from Google CDN. So of course you can do that yourselves just by going to Google and finding that on the web. Just typing jQuery Google CDN and find that link to include in your page yourself. So now, if this was a real project that I would be putting on the web, of course I would be looking to create separate style sheets, even a custom scripts file, which I could then minify, etc. For this instance, this is not going to be a project that I'll put on the web. It's purely for the tutorial purposes, and actually also to keep things simple. I'm going to keep it all in the same file as much as possible. So what I'm going to be doing is actually putting all the code within this single document, so I don't have to keep switching between different files. Now, if you're going to be doing this for the web, which of course you probably are, then I do advise that you have separate style sheets, etc. If you want to learn more about creating a good workflow, then please reference some of our other tutorials. But again, let's get started. So as you can see, here's my style tags. So I'll be putting my CSS between these. Within the body will be my HTML, so the div tags, and of course we will be doing some scripting. So here, let's create script. Type is going to be text, JavaScript, and then let's just space this out. So now, before we can actually get involved and immerse ourselves in Parallax, we're going to need to actually be able to scroll on the page, which means we're going to have to create some kind of style or some content or layout. So what I'm going to do is just create a very basic layout, just full width divs with height, and repeat them. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just create some divs. They'll have a class and the class which I'm going to set will be block. I'm going to repeat these several times. Okay, and this one will be black, this one will be white, black. So it's just going to be like that going down the page, and you're going to see exactly what I'm doing in just a second. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this class of block, which applies to all of these divs, and I'm going to set this to display block. Width will be 100%, and the height is going to be, let's make it 400 pixels in height. Border of 0 pixels, solid, and transparent. What I'm going to do here is set a few default styles. So for example, on the body, we're going to set a max width of 1920, and we're going to set a margin of 0 auto, and of course also for just not dot divs but div, let's set box sizing to border box. Now what I want to do here is actually say block dot black and just set the background to just that. Now what I should have created now is this kind of effect where I can now scroll down the page, as you see, and it's just going to be really easy to work with. Now what I want to do here is have a random one. Let's make it this one here, which is actually going to be let's say blue. So let's just come here and blue, and let's set the background to be just that. Let's make it blue. Now if I just show you that, what we've got now is that. Okay, so I don't want that to be in view by default, so in this instance what I'm actually going to do is take this off of here and make it this one here. So within this particular one, obviously you're likely to have some content that you're going to be working with. I'm going to set the height of this one actually also the blue. I'm going to set this to something more. Let's set this to about 870 pixels in height. So you can see this is a div that we're going to be working with. Now what I'm actually going to do just for the time being is just comment out blue, and what I'm going to do is actually create some sort of unique content to be within this div. So let's go and get, so let's create a title. Okay, so let's create another div within this and give this a class of title tile, and within this we're just going to have a name or something like that of some kind. So in this instance I'm going to create another span inside, and that is just going to house this, which is going to be our title. So effectively what I've created now is, if you have a look, we've just got a title, so it's very basic. Now for the body again, let's just come back here and set the font family And let's set that to Arial. That should be enough just for the purposes of the tutorial. Let's set the font size to a base of 24 and a line height of 30 pixels, and basic color of let's just give it black for this tutorial. Now what we've got here, again, let's go ahead and let's just target this. So we've got title, and let's set the font size of this to something like 35 and a line height of 40 pixels. Now for this particular div, we're going to set this to display block. We're going to set the width of it to 500 pixels, and the height is going to be 450 pixels. We're going to have a background of white, and we're going to set the border to 0 pixels, solid, and of course transparent. Now what we have now is nothing that we can really see. So within this, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to set the margin to 0 also. What you'll see then is that if I temporarily, let's just put a background on this, let's make this something really obvious, so red. What we've got now is we've got a div which has got a set width, and it's just centered. Now I want to center this vertically, which is another really cool thing I'm about to show you, because you don't need to know the height of a div to center it. Now there's several ways of doing it, but the way I tend to do it, because it's quicker, is what I'll say is I will make this position absolute, which means that I'm going to have to set left 0 and right 0 to actually keep that in the same place. And what I'll also, now that's positioned absolute, I'm going to say 50% from the top. And when I do that, what's probably going to happen, div is going to disappear because the container is not, the parent is not relative. So this block CSS, I'm going to have to set this to relative, but it's still not in the center. So we're going to say transform translate y minus 50%. And if I now refresh the page, you see this is absolutely vertically and horizontally centered. I didn't have to really do much code at all. But of course, we're going to now need to put in the prefixes. So we've got WebKit, Moz, Opera. So that's our prefixes. So we're standards compliant, and you can do the same exact thing with our title here, for example. So this would be actually a bit different, but let's set the text align to center. That's going to center our text. But if we want to vertically do it, so let's get a hold of our span here. So I'll just say span. And again, we're just basically, at the moment, we're making a layout that we can actually take forward and apply our parallax to. So please just bear with me. Let's set this to display block. Make this position absolute. Left, right 0. Margin 0 auto. Let's come down a bit. So again, top 50%. Then we could just copy all of this code that we've written. let's just see what we've got. There you go. So that's perfectly centered. We can just inspect that. Yeah, that looks right to me. Now we have this. What I want to create now is an effect on this div where it's going. We're going to draw in the border. So to do that, we're going to do some advanced, a little bit of creative CSS. And then actually we're going to write some script that's going to fire that when the div comes into the viewport. In other words, what we want to happen is as we scroll, when this div becomes visible to the user, because they scroll down the page, this is going to draw in, and perhaps we'll even then fade in the text within. So this can be a really nice effect. And later on in the tutorial, we might even do it so that as you scroll, this is going to move in the opposite direction. So it's going to be quite cool. So the first thing we need to do is actually write some CSS and some code that's going to draw in this div. There's a lot of different ways to do this, as there is with most things within the web development field. You could do it with SVG. Support for SVG at the moment, it's not that great. But what we're going to do is a little bit different. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So at the moment, I've just got this horrible red color, and just for the purposes of making things clear. So you know, perhaps you can play around with this kind of styling when or as you actually come to putting this on the web. So what I now want to do is I want to come back, I want to target this particular element, so our red div, which I have given the class of a title tile. So what I'm going to do is going to grab this. I'm going to do this with pseudo elements. So I'm going to say before, and so we'll say content. Position absolute, top 0, and left 0. The width of this is going to be 0, and the height of this is going to be 10 pixels. So by default, this is actually going to be invisible. Now to make this really clear for the purposes of the tutorial, we're going to code this up and then we're going to make it pretty. For the purposes of the tutorial, we're going to make this really obvious color, so we're going to make it yellow. So imagine how clear that's going to be on the red background. It's going to be really clear. For now, that's all we actually need to do. But what I want to do is take the same CSS and I want to change it slightly on hover. So on hover, this should do something different. What I want it to do is change the width to 100%. So if I now refresh this, you can see what's happening. The div, well, sorry, this pseudo element is going from 0 and it's positioned all the way up in the top left corner. It's going from 0 to 100 in 0 seconds. So to make this smooth and as if this was drawing in, you might have guessed we're just going to add a transition. So if I add a transition, let's say 0.5 seconds. What's going to happen is it's going to appear as if it's drawing in. At the moment, this is doing it on hover, okay, which is not actually how we want this to happen. But we're going to change that later on. We just want to do it on hover for now because it's going to help us work with this. So this is actually not bad. It's kind of working. But this is only the top border. We want to draw in the whole entire div. And also, as you can see, if you mouse off of this, which perhaps for later on is what we're ultimately going to do with this, it's not going to be an issue. But a good thing to just understand is that if I wanted this to actually let's say de-draw, if that makes sense. As with any kind of transition, you just put it back on this, this is not the hover state. So if this has a transition, look at what happens. So this is the hover, which is when it goes to 100%. But if I now take my cursor and I mouse out, it's got a transition that goes from 100% and then a transition that goes back to its default state. So that's a really cool thing to learn. But that's not all we want to do. So of course now let's try and do this right side of the div. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different, but it's going to be the same principle. So now let's say after. And what we want to actually do here, again, it's a bit different, but largely the same. So we have to say content. Again, position absolute. This time it's going to be right top. And this time, the width, okay, the width is going to be 10 pixels and the height is going to be 0 because we want this to actually go down. We don't want this to go across. And again, so that you can see it, so that it matches, we're going to make this one yellow. For now, we're going to change that, so don't worry about that. And just because it's a bit long-winded, I'm going to take this transition and I'm going to apply this transition here. And actually, we didn't add our prefixes, so let's just do that real quick. So WebKit, WebKit browsers like Safari and actually Chrome. Moz, of course, it's Firefox, and then O for Opera, and of course the transition itself, just there. So let's just paste that in, and we can paste that in here too. So then we've got all of our prefixes. And now what you can see is this is still not doing anything because this is not, we've not given this 100%. So let's now come back here. And again, when this is hovered, okay, we're going to make the height 100%. Miss the percent. And again, we need to, copy our transition. So it's taking me a bit longer to write all this code, putting in the prefixes. So I could say to you, I'll just write, basic transition and ask you guys to put in the fullbacks. Well, not the fullbacks, but the prefixes. But let's keep it high quality and let's do this. So as you can see, what we have now is basically the effect that we want. Because this div has a width and a height, we can say 100% for both width and height, and it'll happen. Problem that we have is that this isn't really drawing in the way we want it. We want it to draw, the top and then go down here and then come across and go back up. It's just firing all at the same time. This is where we need to get creative. So on this particular one here, which is the right side, we're going to add a transition delay. Now on this side, it's going to need to be 0.5 seconds. So now that we add that, let's see what happens. It goes. It's not working. And that is because I put it on the wrong. Put it in the wrong place. So let's just try this again. Check that out. Actually, we'll need the. That looks pretty cool to me. That looks really cool. I like that. So let's not worry about the when we mouse out. Let's not worry about that because that's not de-drawing the right way. And because we don't ultimately want to do that, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. That of course is possible if you think about it. You just have to reverse what we've done. But yeah, not going to need to do that. So let's just, now that we've added the before and after to this div, we can't do another pseudo element off of this, obviously. So what we're going to do is we're going to do it off of this span. Okay, so this is where we get really creative. So our span, where's our span? Our span is here. So if I take this, what I now want to do is I want to come here and I want to create this, the bottom of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say before, and largely it's the same code. So it's just going to be content, what else? Oh gosh, what is this? Pointer events, position, absolute, bottom, and right is 0. The width is going to be 0 pixels, and the height is of course 10 pixels. Oh, not 100. And the background is yellow, which is a horrible color, but for now it's fine. That's it. That's it. Yeah, that's it. We need to just copy over our transition. And what else? What else do we need to do? We need to add a transition delay. And this one is going to be 1 second. And you're going to see why in just a second. Okay, so draw in. Doesn't work. Because I made the same mistake again. Okay. So this one is where the magic happens. So this one is where the width goes to 100%. And then the delay needs to be on this. Okay, so I got a little bit confused for a second, so I paused the video and here we are, figured it out. Basically what I hoped I'd be able to do is actually keep the code minimal as possible, and I wanted to create basically the two other pseudo elements that we need from this element here, the span. Problem was to center this vertically. I set this to absolute, which meant that basically that pseudo element was relative to this span, which is just in the center of the div, which meant that I couldn't put it on the bottom of the div of its parent like I wanted to draw it in, as we have been doing in the tutorial. So the only way to go around that was to create another span, which actually has a 0 width and 0 height, so it's not even visible. But it just means that because this isn't going to have any kind of styling, it just means that I can put this pseudo element wherever I want. So I can put it on the bottom and I can put it on the right side of the div of the parent. But because of the way I'd actually targeted it in CSS, because I expected it would be the only span within this the div, what I'd done here wouldn't work because I just targeted a span. So I've given this a class of title, and also down here I'm targeting this one as well. You can call this anything you want. So hopefully that's clear. The other mistake which I made here was I actually put the hover on the span. So the hover should be on the parent, because and we're actually going to change this to an active class when we get to our scripting part. But minor setback, but let's return to the tutorial. So what you can see, what I've done here is I've now added a transition delay of 1 second to the bottom border. So if I hover this so we can see our animation, this needs to start immediately. This side needs to start after this is finished. So the entire transition for this is 0.5 seconds. Double that. The transition delay should then be 0.5 seconds. And then double that, it should be 1 second transition delay. So if you understand that, you should then understand what we're going to do next. So let's just do our final pseudo element, which is going to be, of course, after. So here let's put in content, position absolute, bottom 0, left 0. The width of this is going to be 10 pixels, and the height is going to be 0 pixels. And of course we need a transition. Should actually be on this guy as well. And then what else do we need? So this, we just need our background of yellow. And then after this, all we need to do is put in our hover state. So again, when we're hovering this guy, what we want to do is we want to make the height 100%, but we need a transition delay. Can you guess? 1.5 seconds. And then here, let's copy our transition. So that should actually be drawing it now. Okay, that's definitely not right. So made a mistake. We want a transition delay here, but we don't want, I don't know why I put that there actually. It shouldn't have a transition here. That doesn't need it. It's gonna inherit a transition from this anyway. Is it gonna inherit? So as you can see, again, we've not programmed this to work on mouse out one by one, you know, de-draw, but we have coded it to draw in just like that. So I've set this up on hover so that we could just basically develop this, but I don't want it to happen like that. What I want to happen is as I scroll, when this comes into view, I want it to draw in. So this is where it gets fun, okay? So if you didn't find that fun, hopefully you'll find this fun. So basically we want to change the event. So from hover, we want to change it to active. Okay, so change hover to an active class. So here, just wherever it says hover, remove hover, because that was just something that we used to develop this. So now if you refresh this, it isn't doing anything. But if I come in and I inspect this element and I manually add a active class, click out, you'll see it draws in. So effectively what we want to do is just that. We want to scroll, and then when we hit this, we want to add a class. To this element specifically, we want to add a class that is going to fire that animation. And that's going to be our parallax, okay, effect, our parallax animation. But we're going to need to do it dynamically, because if this was a non-static site, maybe it was a CSS managed page, the client could add more content and then, you know, everything falls out of whack. So I'm going to show you how to do that pretty simply. So let's come down to our script tags. Okay. Kind of want to create some space here. Just want to be able to just create. I just want to be able to put this in the middle of the page. Okay, that's okay. So this is where we're going to need to use some JavaScript. So let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say window.scroll, and we're going to pass through a function. And within this, we're going to create some variables. So I'm going to say var w scroll equals, and I'm going to explain this as I go. So basically, we're going to say window.scroll top. Now, the best way to explain what this is if we do a console.log of our variable. And I'm going to show you exactly what it does within the console. So this is actually pretty cool. So let's go and inspect the page, come into our console. And you see I've already got a whole load of things in here. If I just refresh this, there's nothing. So if I scroll, you're going to see, just look at my console. Loads and loads of numbers. What this is telling me, and the far bottom, this number here at the very bottom of the list is the most recent. It's telling me how far I've scrolled down the page from the top. So if I actually come all the way back up to the top, this is going to be 0. Let's do that. So you can see I'm at the top of the page, and this is 0. So this is just telling me the distance from the top. Now, in that essence, what I could effectively do is I could say something like create an if statement, and then if w scroll equals, okay, so if say I wanted to be in line with this, I line this up, this is about, let's come down to the bottom, so this is 798, so I could say, for example, if w scroll equals 798, do something. Problem with that is, as I said, this could be a CMS managed page, content could add some more content, and this fires way too early if there's, going to be further down the page. So we need to make that dynamic, which is also very easy to do if you know what you're doing. So to do that, we're going to create another var, another variable, which is going to be position. And something I like to do, just so that it's clear these are all variables, is I like to do a $sign. Now, if you're familiar with PHP, you might appreciate that, but that's a whole nother topic. So what I want to do here is effectively say this is, I want to grab the distance of a particular element within my DOM and say this is how far it is from the top, which I can then use in some other areas of the script, because really what we're doing in this section is preparing for the rest of the script that we're going to write. And we're making these global variables that we can access anywhere within our code. So let's just come up here. So you can see this is the element we want to target. This is actually exactly the same as our code here. So basically it's just this here. So we want to target this div, which, in case you got mixed up here, we want to target this big red div. So to find out that, what we need to say is find the offset, but this is going to provide us with more than we need. So if I show you, if I do a console log of this particular variable, so if I do a console log of position, this is going to return, oh wait, hang on a second, something's gone wrong. Uncourt reference equals uncourt reference 221. It's not right. Windows scroll top. I see. I didn't update. I added that. I didn't update our console log. That should work. So you can see that it's returning the top and left values. I don't want that. I just want the top, so I'm just going to say dot top, and that will return what we want. Now if I scroll up and down the page, you're going to notice something here. This value here, okay, so if I come up to the top, it's easier to see. This one is going to change, okay, every time that I scroll, but this remains the same, because at the moment this is fired constantly as I scroll, because this is in Windows.scroll, so it's constantly returning this because we've done a console log. But basically this is not, because this is just telling us a single thing, which is not moving as we scroll, not at the moment. So what we want to do is we want to add a class when this comes into view. So basically what we need to say here is pretty easy. We'll just say if, and then what we want to say is our W scroll, so basically where we are within the window, is greater than this. Okay, so let's do something simple here. Let's check this works. So let's say console.warn. So this is going to stand out from all of everything that's going to come into our console. And let's say working, something like that. Oh god, it's not so annoying. Yeah, this is what we want. I don't know. Working, is that good? I don't know, whatever. Let's refresh this, and then let's scroll down a little bit, and there you go. You can see it's now in the field of view, and we're getting working. So it's obviously working. But what we really want to do, if I take this, okay, and I say add class active, and you're going to see just what we've created. Now let's just remove this, and let's come here, let's refresh this, and let's look how cool this is going to be. It's not working. Okay, I see what's happening here. See, I'm expecting it to fire when I hit this or sooner, but it's not. It's hitting it like if I do an inspect. Let me show you what's happening. I can now scroll down further because of this, but if the top of this div, if this hits this, it's gonna fire. Check that, bang. So it's working, it's beautiful, right? But it's not what we want. You see, what we actually want is, I think I want it to come in when it hits this, which is actually this parent div, okay? So this has got a unique class, which is block blue. So I need to change this. Okay, so that's gonna need to be a class. And actually this is now, you see, this is two classes, which makes this unique, but this is not two elements. If this has got a space, if an element on a page has two classes, when you're referencing it in CSS or anything, it needs to be like this. There's no space. If I did it like this, then it would think it was two different elements within the DOM. It's not. So this is just going to enable us to target this uniquely, even though this block class is used on multiple elements within the DOM. Okay, so now let's see. This is still not going to fire, but it's going to fire when I scroll down just to the end of that black. Okay, it's not doing it. So obviously I've done something wrong. Wait. But it's, I messed up again. See, what I've done wrong here is this actually is what needs the class, because in our CSS we've applied the active state to this element, which is fine. We don't have to trigger it and add the class to the same element. This is jQuery, so we can do anything we want. So basically I'm firing this dependent on the offset of this, which actually this needs a colon here. Don't know what happened to that. but we're adding a class to this element here. So, okay, this is, you know, how confusing sometimes this can be. But, okay, now you're going to see, there you go, finally. Oh my gosh, that took a while. So as you can see now, that works perfectly. That looks really cool. Now if we make this a bit prettier, so I think this would be a lot prettier if we change the colors. So let's change the colors really quick. Okay, so here we go. So you can see that if I refresh this now, this is the parallax I'm talking about. So the second that this comes in, it's drawing in. It's an animation on scroll, which is actually really cool. I really like that. And it shows you, you know, a little bit of jQuery can go a long way. We've not really done that much. And when you come to put it online, this is really something that you'll be using when you're debugging. So just comment the console log lines out, because you don't want that to be appearing when someone's looking at the page. So now if you scroll, it's not going to happen. It's just using the code. But it's really handy to be able to uncomment that and then, you know, see everything that's going on within your script. It's handy for debugging. So now what we want to do is we want to animate this so that as we scroll down the page, this is going to move at a different rate and direction even to that we are scrolling. So to do that, I'm going to come up to this CSS here for this element, and I'm going to remove this what we put in to center it vertically, because this is a transform. We're going to need to use a we're going to need to translate this. So I'm going to remove that. I'm just going to delete that. So what's going to happen now is that div is going to default to the top. So what we can do is, because this has a fixed height, I can actually just remove margin 0 auto, and all I need to do is say top 0 and bottom 0, and with the margin of, actually, so not 0, margin of auto, that will center it for us. This only works if you know the height of the div. If this was, you know, if this was a fluid height, if this collapsed and expanded depending on the inner content, then this wouldn't actually work. So the script part of this is fairly simple. So outside of our statement here, I'm just going to apply it to the same div, or the same element that we want to actually parallax. And we're going to say CSS, and then we're going to transform, and then we're going to translate, and this is going to be 0 pixels, comma, and I want this to actually parallax up, not down. So I'm going to use negative figure, and then here we are going to create another variable which is going to house our calculation. So I'm actually going to set this to the name of the variable I'll create, which is going to be calc, stands for obviously calculation, and then we're going to close this off. So we're just going to say percentage and then closing bracket. And that's all we actually need to do here. We just need to obviously create that calculation. So this is going to be var calc, and actually should probably do what I said was good to do earlier, which was just add this $sign so it's easily visible This is a variable within the code itself. And this is where we can do our calculation. So I'm actually going to call this wscroll, and I'm going to divide it by something like 14. You can play with this, and this will basically be the strength setting. So let's just play with this and see. So, okay, so as you can see now, as we scroll, this is actually, it's moving around as we scroll. So if I scroll, you'll see this div is moving at a different rate. So this is not quite what we want. It's kind of the strength is where I want it to be. So I'm actually going to say on the div, in the CSS here, I'm going to give it something like 300 pixels from the top. More. And I'm going to set this to something like 900 pixels from the top. So when I do that, what you're going to see, let's just come up to the top and let's just see what this looks like. So this is going to draw in, and then, yeah, that looks good. You can see it's just moving at a different rate to the rest of the page. Yeah, that looks really nice. It's just something different. And what we should actually do is these blocks should actually have overflow hidden, so that when this actually goes outside of the parent, it's not going to be visible. But that looks really cool. So if I just show you, yeah, that's really cool. So as we scroll up and down, this is moving at a different rate to the rest of the page. Now just a final look at what we've created. So if I scroll down the page, you're going to see that this draws in, and the div itself, the element that we applied the parallax to, as you can see, that's scrolling up and down at a different rate to that of which we're scrolling. Now, you can refine this a lot more. You can do some really cool stuff with it. You can take the code, personalize it, you know, add your own spin to it. If you had images and different elements and divs moving around the page, perhaps if you created a really nice scene within Photoshop and then, you know, created that in HTML, that would be really cool. But the purpose of this tutorial and all the other tutorials is really just to show you the base, give you that core concept and understanding so that you can take it further, expand on it, and do something cool with it yourself. And to be honest, with the script here that we've written, you can really do a lot with that. You know, that really gives a good base, and you can really experiment and play with that yourself. And of course, this is the first tutorial of quite a few that we're going to be doing on Parallax. As you can see, this is really cool, and it's something that we're going to explore a lot more in the near future. So before we end the tutorial, I'd just like to take the opportunity to encourage you to visit our official website, which is siteeasy.com. There'll be a link in the description of the video. And this is our official website where we offer various pre-built scripts and pre-built websites that you can actually download and use yourself. These include things like user registration, social networking, various things including e-commerce. There'll be another link to our official website, which is simpletut.com. This is where we upload all of our video tutorials and our resources as such. Really great resource for you if you're looking to learn more about web development, to pick up some new ideas which you can apply into your own projects. And of course, CSS Menu Creator, which is a really cool online generator for CSS menus. You can write the code and simply copy it into your projects. It can save you a ton of time. Once again, thank you very much for following along with this video tutorial. Hope you learned something. Have any questions? Leave them in the comments below. Please like, comment, rate, and subscribe. Thank you and have a great day.